First special meeting of the 167th session of the Literary and Scientific Society, also known as Literific. My name is Margaret Sinnott and I'm the president of the 167th session and your chair for tonight. So before we get started into tonight's debate, which is this House Would Legalise Marijuana, at the back there's a candy corner, regular feature Literific, one of our star members, so far away. There's also a suggestion box, so if I suck, or if anybody else if you have a comment on anything for tonight, you can't hear me, probably speak louder, please go and write it in our suggestion box. There's pens and paper and whatever else. I also found these in the box from last year, so I thought I'd read a few, just to give you a bit of an idea of what to expect, or some of them. Okay, so more Kinder Bueno sweets, in brackets, the hippos. Valuable. And people have probably written them that are in this room, by the way. Bins, question mark. There is a bag for a bin. More Kinder, M-O-A-R, Kinder. I think it's Kinder sweets, probably the hippos. Yeah, M-O-A-R, for more. Okay, Oren is a beautiful person. He is helped me. Like nobody wrote a name on that, so and I don't know what kind of help they've done. I'm suggesting, more Johnny Dodgers. Help him. More Kinder chocolates in capital letters, please! Exclamation mark.
Sorry.
These Kinder chocolates are really like, yeah, the treasure he bought those, there's no Kinder there. And the Dark Lord Sauron. Okay, so just suggestions. Please do not have any space on Dark Lord chocolates. Put them in the box. Okay, so on the Literific, Literific is the oldest society of Queens, which anybody will tell you. Began in 1850 as a paper reading society, and we switched to a debating society in 1873. So continued until 1967, when apparently the university thought that the society was becoming a bit too political. Whenever they had notions such as God save the Queen, this house doesn't like Gaelic. This house would raise the scarlet, things like that.
Yes. This house would rather have a red hand and green fingers.
Yeah, so a bit too political for the time period. And then, to give them another excuse, the president then got a bit too naked at a debate.
A little naked is fine for everyone's thinking the same thing, but too naked, no, stop that.
And then apparently stole a bit too much drink from the SU. So, long and short, but we got banned for a wee while, 40 years, for that one night of indiscretion. So, during this time, we were sort of part of the Union Debating Society, the Union Debating Society and the Union Debating Society, which I've written here. And then debating and mooting, and then in 2011 we reformed again under our eternal leader, Mr. Paul Shannon, and we're now here, 5 years later. So, quick sort of history of the Literific. Glad you're all here, and I hope you have a good night. I will be back after the minutes are read from the last meeting, which was in May, 13th May.
Long time ago.
A long time ago, which was this House believes Northern Ireland should be a registered charity. So, if you welcome our secretary, Mr. Robbie Winters.
Good evening, one and all. The 22nd Ordinary Meeting of the Literific took place on the 14th of May in the Senate Room. I was attended by 27 members. Private members' business was accepted from Miss Alex Philpott, Mr. Calvin Black, and Miss Marie Louise Sinnott. President Emeritus Paul Yahya then announced the evening's motion, this House would make Northern Ireland a registered charity. Mr. Lee Broussard opened the proposition by stating that supporting the motion was not anti-Northern Irish, but merely doing what is best for the country. He was quick to assert that charity does not immediately equate to pity, and begrudgingly conceded that we as a country have been living off the charity of the UK for a wee while now. Ever the pragmatist, Mr. Broussard asked the House to think of the positives. He stated the obvious by saying that we're not recognised much as a nation. And being the only country in the world to be registered as a charity would certainly earn some international recognition at the end of the day. Although this did raise the harrowing prospect of Bob Geldof doing Northern Ireland AIDS, which no one really wants that. Opening for the opposition were Mr. Jack Thompson, who wished to remind the House of the official definition of a charity. A charity consists of money being distributed to trustees, with Mr. Thompson asserting that the trustees in our country are not that great. He argued that the executive in Northern Ireland isn't investing enough in infrastructure, and in order to better ourselves as a country, we must all take part in what Mr. Thompson coined as a cultural shift, a sentiment he clearly endorsed, going on to repeat the phrase 19 times. He concluded by saying that being registered as a charity would be doing a disservice to our people and stressed the importance of being economically independent. The second speaker for the proposition was Mr. Derek Crosby, who prefaced his argument by stating that his speech would be vague, rambling, and rubbish, the three cornerstones of debate. In the week when the Conservative Party returned a majority in the general election, Mr. Crosby revealed that he'd said it before and he'd say it again: democracy simply doesn't work. In direct response to this, the proposition speaker asserted that what Northern Ireland needs isn't a democratic process, but instead a benevolent dictatorship. We reject the idea of charity, save millions in the absence of elections, and will become a beacon to a brighter world. Continuing for the opposition with Mr. Harry Adair, who worryingly preemptively declared that in our country we live in the midst of paramilitary politics. Did you know something we didn't know at the time? He claimed that converting our country to a charity would be the equivalent of putting a band-aid on a missing limb. And if Taylor Swift has taught us anything, it's that band-aids can't fix bullet holes. Yeah, that I said. Mr. Adair asserted that passing the buck wouldn't solve the problems under the surface of Northern Ireland. In 2014, business in this country grew by 7%. The speaker asked us to ponder what would happen to our prosperous market if we were registered as a charity. He concluded by stating that such an occurrence would result in Northern Ireland simply becoming the resident backwater of Great Britain. SU President Emeritus Kieran Gallagher was clear for the proposition. He lamented how 43% of this year's intake of students won't receive the bursaries that they are due. He stated that we have no other useful industries in this country, that we can't look after ourselves, that we are so socially and financially far flung from the rest of the UK that it is laughable, and that if it weren't for our geographical position, we might well be held in the same regard as those in the third world. We, as a society, are suffering from the illness of social delusion, concluded proud Northern Irishman Mr. Gallagher. On a lighter note, Mr. Finbar Rogers then closed the opposition and so the debate. He declared simply that Oxfam are a charity, we are not. He reminded the House that our country was created for two reasons. Number one, to stop the Civil War, and number two, to preserve all its industry. Essentially on its time for us... You're out there, James. Essentially on its time for us to rip off the political plaster and move on to a brighter future. Mr. Rogers took the debates to new heights by saying that this country shouldn't be made a charity, but instead privatised. He took a moment to fantasise of a Northern Ireland where all barren fields were officially acquired by Game of Thrones and Derry's walls were breached by Yahoo. The debate then moved to the floor where questions were heard from Greg Woods, Henry Adams, Craig Miller, Rosie Watterson, Alexander Philpott and Marie-Louise Sinner. As ever, a preliminary vote was taken based on House opinion, which read 4 ayes, 17 nays and 6 abstentions, while casting a vote based on Speaker's performance read 10 ayes, 7 nays and 7 abstentions. The motion was passed. Can I take a minute to read?
So now we're on to private members' business. This is a chance for you to bring up anything that's been on your mind, not every single time, but like in the news, if you have any sort of mini debates, anything you want to comment on, anything. Nothing's fine. Okay, so next we have a few announcements. So we are, at the start of October, going to be entering the Irish Times debating competition, which is an all-Ireland debating competition, and it's the same sort of style as what we have in our House debates, 7-minute speeches, protected minute, things like that. So I know it's early, but Southern universities start before us, so we don't have as much time to build up a sort of membership for competition pool. So if you want to sign up for that, that's good. And get in touch with Robbie can have that one. Next week is This House Believes the West created ISIS, if you want to come along. And membership cards are at the back. speak to Robbie as well, if you want to sign up for membership. It's £5 for all members today, which is actually a discounted price, thanks to our treasurer just deciding that price 20 minutes ago. But yeah, no, £5 for everybody. It's usually £15 for if you're not a member, if you're not a student at Queen's, so go on ahead. What is next? President's questions. Okay, so this is where you can ask the President any question you like. Questions have ranged from, what did you have for breakfast this morning? Like, yeah, I had a breakfast this morning knowing that question might be coming up. Or anything you like, anything about society or whatever. Johnny Finley.
Just a quote from the blue. What did Madam President have for breakfast this morning?
My mum made me a fry today, actually, at about 11:30, first week. Jack Thompson.
How does the society intend to alleviate this kind of wine shortage?
I mean, the obvious answer is to probably buy Kinder Buenos, put them in the back of the room. Are the hippos what you want, or actual Kinder?
We want
Just the hippos? That's it? No, because see, the hippos are more expensive. Alright, we're gonna go this. Craig. Credit time. We actually do have an American listener as well, so he probably won't have any idea what we're talking about. Oh yeah, okay, so, sorry, I forgot an announcement. There's a hashtag on Twitter, is Weed Debate tonight. If you want to like hashtag that at the end, the word debate is very important in that sense. Any other questions? No? Grand? Okay. So we can get on to tonight's debate, which is this House Would Legalise Marijuana. We have the chairperson of SISTA NI,
Party leader.
Party leader, sorry, of SISTA NI, in tonight as well as some resident speakers. So, we should explain the rules. Okay, 7 minute speeches, the first minute and the last minute are protected. We lost the bell. Misplaced the bell. Don't know how you missed it. The box, if anybody sees it, the box is about right? So I will be banging on the table the first minute and the last. So the first minute is protected. Nobody's allowed to ask any questions. The last minute's also protected. Still not allowed to ask any questions. But the middle 5 minutes, you can put in a point of information. Please do try to keep these short and sweet. Try to keep them short because you're eating into the speaker's time as well with your speech, or with their speech. So just like a quick sort of, you just start up and say, on that point, Sarah, that's my mum. Short, straight point. And then it's up to the speaker to accept or reject your point. If they reject it, you can just sit down and you can ask the question again later. It's sort of a bad habit to ask a question, like if they reject you and you sit down, just sort of jump back up again and be like, oh, that's point, sir. So you'll hear shouts of no barking probably from everybody else in the room, so try not to do that. And then afterwards we will have questions and answers, so you will have time to ask a question at the end if you haven't had time in the speech. Is that everything? Got everything?
What happens if the speaker accepts point of information?
The speaker will probably answer that point of information.
And someone else then asks us questions?
Oh no, that's also barking, I suppose. It's okay, so somebody else can like go straight after the first speaker. Sorry. Is that everything? Yes.
If you miss out on one, you can ask it at the end for your question. If you miss out on the key one, you can ask your question at the end.
Yeah, we have questions at the end and answers at the end. Oh yeah, no, it's okay, so it's open to the floor afterwards to ask questions at the end. I don't get the point.
This is what I'm there.
Oh, okay, so yeah, you can ask questions and answers at the end. So there's the sixth time. Okay, so with all of that fumbling, and nobody said she would resign. Our first speaker for the proposition is Mr. Finbar.
Ladies and gentlemen, for three reasons, this motion should be allowed to pass. The first being that the entire premise of the motion is wrong. by the very nature of democracy. Because in a free society, you do not need a reason to make things legal. In a free society, you need a reason to make something illegal. And when it comes to marijuana, as I believe it is known by the natives, in the original dialect of Oscar-Scots, there are many reasons that can also, and have also in the past, been applied to a substance known as alcohol, the production and consumption of. When you think about it, this is a substance that leaves you horribly dehydrated, leading to aches and pains all over your body, from your head to other areas. Slows your reflexes, leaving you accident prone in a way that often results in a major case of being dead. And then leads to, no thank you, ma'am. It's the first minute. And then can lead to, and also increase your chance of getting various illnesses such as depression, diabetes, liver failure, heart disease, gout, and then just plain old alcohol poisoning. And when we drink this substance, before we do, we raise our glass, or flask in this case, and we say, "To your health." The difference, though, is cultural. Because alcohol is fun. And being an alcoholic means you're a character. And it isn't a problem for anyone but you and your bank manager and the other members of UKIP. So, the Prohibition era of the United States is remembered as their greatest policy disaster since that time they killed all those people. But the difference is the war on drugs is still ongoing, even though it's been a far greater failure. To say that successive governments were losing the war on drugs is rather like saying the city of Dresden lost the Second World War. Since the war on drugs was declared by Richard Nixon, because the Americans like declaring war on drugs, it really makes them happy, in 1971, and since then, we've spent £1 trillion, £1 trillion, trying to eradicate drugs from our society. And yet still, 2,000 people die each year from drug-related incidents, 500,000 people are searched for drug possession, and 70,000 people a year are given a criminal record on drug-related charges, which completely buggers up their chance of future employment and therefore their entire life. Meanwhile, in the United States of America, land of the free, home of the whopper, they imprison a higher percentage of their citizens than Russia did under Stalin, South Africa under apartheid. 60% of federal prisoners were incarcerated under drug laws, which, probably relatedly, means that most prisons have major problems with drug and alcohol abuse. And
On that point, sir,
yes,
will legalising a drug really help people stop abusing it?
yes, because then they can receive proper treatment rather than be considered criminals. And also in the US, drug laws are essentially a continuation of Jim Crow, because they vastly disproportionately affect people in urban areas. Drugs that are most commonly found in those areas are treated more harshly for possession than in the suburbs, such as crack cocaine and powder cocaine, which Craig is going to talk about later. And in many, so there's the policy of mandatory minimums, whereby crack cocaine is treated as a felony, powder cocaine is treated as a misdemeanor. So if you're caught with crack cocaine, you go to prison, and in many states you are then disenfranchised from voting, whereas if you're caught with powder cocaine, you get a slap on the wrist and pay a fine. For 40 years, we have tried this policy of just saying no, and I don't think that it's going to work. And then, there's a productive reason to legalise marijuana, because the money that it will bring. A few weeks ago, I was in Sapphire Mountain. I don't know a guy there, I'm quite sure he's my cousin. Which is what happens when you're a Catholic. It's just safer just to assume. He was from Colorado.
Good.
Where, the original stuff of 13, where they legalized drugs in 2012 by a ballot measure. They amended the constitution. They legalized marijuana. And since then, they took in $55 million in taxes in the first year. Now, this is partly because it took a while it's still taking a while for supply to catch up with demand, so prices are still high. But that is something that will correct itself. And meanwhile, Colorado has a whole new industry, a whole new flush into its economy. People are actually moving there to be a part of this. There are jobs set up in the production and the distribution, selling, and also inspection to make sure it's actually a proper product and not just mostly rat poison. And can you imagine what we could do in this country with that kind of money, especially considering we most likely have a larger population in Colorado? I think there's only 5 people live there. You know, with that kind of money, we could keep the NHS afloat for at least another 6 weeks. You know, we could give our young people a comprehensive education to make up for the comprehensive education. And that odious little bollock that is usually addressed to the Prime Minister could opt for early retirement and live out the rest of his days on a pig farm in the south of France. And so I'm in the final minutes, so on the final note, I would like to end with a little poem. Life is a waste of time. Time is a waste of life. Get wasted all the time, and you'll have the time of your life. That's the Queen.
I think we can all agree that was beautiful. Now, welcome our first speaker for the opposition is Mr. Harry Adair.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to debate against the proposition here tonight. The debate so far has been characterized in a very simple way of one between enforcement of the practices and, as has already been brought up in the case of the United States war on drugs, enforcement of large fines and penalties as well as a particular police establishment, or between complete legalization of cannabis in this context. Yeah, I'm going to bring up, the politics behind drugs and their use is much more nuanced, and presenting it in such a way is not necessarily accurate or useful. Yeah, the first thing is the obvious comparisons of cannabis to alcohol and tobacco have already been brought up. It's numerous, THC in particular has similar effects, which my colleague Finn has already brought up. However, is it
Similar effects to what?
to other narcotics, but yeah, but we tend to accept the fact that the prohibitionary period in America was a failure due to the fact that the Pandora's box, that is alcohol and tobacco, are already normalized in today's culture. You'll see them in convenience stores, and it's widely recognized to be available if anyone of age. Go ahead.
That is symbolic of the, frankly, ludicrous and arbitrary nature of our attitudes towards drugs. It's just which ones are deemed to be acceptable by the society at the time, because alcohol, tobacco, and heroin, and cocaine, all of them have all gone through periods of prohibition, and then they have been legalized, where some of them are still deemed not acceptable and others are.
Well, that certainly is true. However, what I'm trying to get at in the heart of this is what we define as the lines between what should be allowed in the general public and what shouldn't is not a simple yes or no. It's not simple morality where we can simply say the effect, the statistics show the effect behind this are so negative that we can't be left up to personal choice. But there are things which come into this equation which are not so simple. So it's already been got at the medical uses for cannabis. But what we as the proposition tonight, or the opposition, would hope to define as not necessarily the radical enforcement and criminalisation, as already been got at in the United States example, but rather decriminalisation in a way which is similar to Portugal. This is not in direct opposition to the case for legalising. For the simple fact is, it still views drug use as a misdemeanor. However, it removes the barrier to treatment, that is, the fear of being arrested, the fear of not having access to social benefits, and a mixture of other things which make drug culture in the UK so hostile, it seems. In particular, we would say this is a barrier towards rehabilitation, which I believe both of my colleagues will be developing in further detail. We do need to have a sane conversation about the enforcement of cannabis arrests upon the disenfranchised communities too, to ensure equal justice under the law. However, we will not endorse widespread and opening that Pandora's box upon society as a whole.
Would you not agree it's the illegal status of cannabis that's causing the problems, and that decriminalisation won't remove any of that?
Sure. I think I've heard a quote which is the only side effect of it is the fear of arrest. But as I think, as my colleagues will get into, and I'm quite good, there are more serious side effects that we can't really ignore. Dr. Eva Hock of the Department of Addictive Behaviour and Addictive Medicine at the University of Heidelberg said, "The number of adolescents and adults seeking treatment because of cannabis use disorder is continuously rising in many parts of the world."
The only real medical problem from cannabis use comes from heavy cannabis use, which is essentially the same as being a heavy smoker of tobacco, which is respiratory problems further down the line. So if anyone in here smokes comfortably and want to
That's what I'm going to get into. There absolutely have been documented cases of lung disorders, especially if it's smoked with tobacco. However, some users also experience psychotic symptoms, mainly relating to hallucinations and delusions. Long-term use can have a depressant effect and reduce motivation. Some researchers also suggest long-term use can lead to irreversible cognitive deficits. In New Zealand, researchers found that those who smoke regular and those who smoke before driving are more likely to be injured in a car crash. A recent study in France looked over 10,000 drivers involved in fatal car accidents. Even when the influence of alcohol was taken into account, cannabis users were more than twice as likely to be one of the victims.
Anything that alcohol doesn't also cause.
Well, as I've said, alcohol is one of the greatest failings in US policy because it was trying to crack down on something that was already normalized. It was something that was already, we're slipping towards something, sorry, it's my last minute. But the good news is we don't have a simple choice between enforcing harsh penalties and isolating those who are users of the drug. We can choose a more reasonable line and ensuring that the conversation will flow towards something that ensures that users get proper treatment rather than simply encouraging the delusion that it's a harmless drug, because as it clearly is not. Before we become guinea pigs in some social experiment to have you willingly buy into by bringing up the spectre that is enforcement in the US. But I'll leave the rest to my colleagues. Thank you.
If you could stand up as well while he's making a part of information, just so people can see where you're speaking from. Mr. Craig Miller, go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm going to explain why we shouldn't just do what Harry said, which is decriminalise marijuana, that we should go fully fledged, regulated, new, innovative industry, right? It's the best thing for our country. The pharmaceutical industry is a $300 billion market at the moment. There's absolutely no reason why we can't increase that in the UK by about £6 billion by having a new regulated market, and that is marijuana. In the latest leadership elections, 3 of the 4 candidates said they smoked marijuana when they were at college. The one who didn't get elected, who got elected, hadn't smoked it. No-brainer. Don't really understand why he got elected, but still. But recently, there was a thing that came out about 14-year-old children in a school in the States, and they were told to try and list the 7 wonders of the world. And now they're all arguing about what were the 7. I don't know them myself, but effectively, this one girl goes, I can't really work out my final 1 or 2 things. And the teacher's like, what were the first 5 or 6? She goes, well, to think, to see, to feel, to smell, to hear, to love, to be. Well, that was a girl that was on cannabis oil, and that's the way I'd actually like my child to think. So in terms of some general rebuttal towards Harry, it's going to fill the majority of my speech. But in terms of he did very briefly mention 2 different strains of cannabis, one of which was THC. I'll go on to that first because it's the quickest point. But effectively with marijuana, you've got 2 different strains of marijuana. You've got THC and you've got CBD. Basically, both of which do actually...
What is it? Those aren't strains of marijuana, those are chemicals.
The chemicals within marijuana, okay? You've got the 2 different chemicals. THC, most of the papers will show you, actually does cause some mental health side effects. CBD is actually protective against schizophrenia. In the majority of the street marijuana that we get, it's very high in THC, very low in CBD. Reason being is it doesn't take very much time to grow the marijuana with THC in it. To actually grow the marijuana with high levels of CBD takes a lot longer. And this is the reason why I basically want to have a new innovative industry in the UK. If we can create a market which has got high levels of CBD, we are not just having people that are on marijuana, they're actually not getting the mental health side effects that people say is associated with the use of it. In terms of the cultural side effects, and the reason why marijuana was originally made illegal, and this comes back to the right wing in the States, which I quite like. But basically, in the States, they basically get confused between right-wing authoritarian politics, and they try to amalgamate the 2. When in reality, all they're doing is basically being prejudiced against Mexicans. What happened is, when Mexicans, to use a Trump word, flooded America, what they were doing is they were smoking marijuana. The right didn't like Mexicans, they didn't like them, so they made marijuana illegal. And that's basically where we have got our prejudice in this country from with regards to marijuana. It's because the Americans don't like Mexicans. So we basically pay 4% of our general defence and justice bill, which comes to about £500 million a year, to police American prejudice against Mexicans. I don't know if any of you have heard Trump recently, but his way of dealing with them is by building a wall. But he doesn't want to build a wall against on the border with Canada, so clearly there's some sense there. In terms of...
What about cannabis's, hemp's threat to the oil industry?
What's that?
Hemp's threat to the oil industry.
What do you mean? Sorry.
Hemp can be used to produce plastics, bio-oil, diesel, and Rockefeller and the big oil companies were involved in...
If you've got, from my perspective, if you've got competing industry, it's a good thing. That's my view on it. In terms of the States, in terms of the way hemp was made illegal versus marijuana, I don't know enough about it to comment. So in terms of the financial benefits, I've briefly mentioned the £500 million that you would save by just not policing it. But there's a load of other financial benefits in terms of the jobs that you would create. At the moment, we have about 300,000 people growing pot. Okay, and some would say that's illegal. I would say let's build massive marijuana farms with new innovative marijuana strains and tax the hell out of it. You would get jobs in packaging, processing, retail. You'd have inspectorates like the CQC, which basically are policing the health industry quite well. So effectively what we're doing right now is we are losing £5 billion a year policing something that's basically prejudice that has been built in the States. I can't see the point of that in any way, shape or form. So what I would say in conclusion is let's legalise marijuana, let's earn £5 to £6 billion a year, let's take away all of the criminal offences that people have racked up through either selling or through possession of marijuana. I just can't see the point of ruining these people's lives for something that does basically very little bad in the world. Harry mentioned criminality and actually car crashes. Well, in Colorado at the moment, there's been a 3% drop in fatalities since they've legalized marijuana. I was speaking about this before. The only thing I can think of is people that are doing less drink driving and doing more high driving. So I can't think of any other reason why there's been a 3% drop in Colorado. In terms of crime, we've had a 2.2% drop in Colorado, excluding all of the marijuana-related offences. So you get less crime, you get less fatality, you earn money, you give people jobs. It's a winner in my eyes. I urge you to vote for legalising of marijuana.
Okay, and the second speaker for the opposition is Mr. Jack Thompson.
Hello, good evening everyone, Madam President, members of the opposition, members of the proposition, and the lovely audience. My name is Jack. I'm just going to speak on behalf of the opposition today, and my arguments are really centered around a few things. One is the morality argument, I'm going to briefly touch on, of introducing something illegally into society. The other I'm going to speak about is I'm surprised that the proposition didn't spend more time speaking on the medical benefits, but there is a bit of discussion there that happened on it. But I'd like to expand a bit more on the actual evidence that exists around it of cannabis versus the purified product itself as well. And then I'd also like to talk, as we've all talked before, about the decriminalisation of it as well. But first, some points of rebuttal. First, we're talking about alcohol. If you remember a while ago, Professor Nutt was a gentleman who used to work for, I forget the name of the organisation, but basically he looked at the Drugs Association. He said basically that if alcohol were to be introduced now and came in now, it would be completely illegal. It is the whole cultural idea that it's there, and as Howard would love me to say, it's the idea of a cultural shift that we need on this. But Professor Nutt spoke about that. He also spoke about prohibition being a complete failure. Well, prohibition was a completely wrong stance to be able to take on alcohol, because that was an outright ban. What we've had in public health with smoking and alcohol has been a brilliant thing that's been happening, which is a form of prohibition, I think, really, with smoking cessation, and letting people know about the ill health benefits of smoking, letting people know about the ill health benefits of alcohol. And what we're seeing is a reduction in the alcoholic levels, reduction in people taking cigarettes as well, but then we have vape coming in, which has actually been a bit of a nightmare. But that's a whole different argument in its own self. Craig went ahead and talked about the regulated market, and he talked about how the regulated market would mean that we bring in a lot more tax. What I'd like to say is, of course, with that taxation and regulation of having something with a certain THC level, there's two things with that. First off, have you ever seen loads of those cheap Spanish cigarettes? So people aren't going to want to pay a high amount of tax on weed. People will try and find alternatives for cheaper ones, which then removes that regulation side that you've talked about. The other is talking about THC. That'll be at a certain level, as you say, it's going to be beneficial to people, that it doesn't have the schizophrenic side effects that has been seen to be linked. With it, what we will see is those who look for a higher buzz. It doesn't eliminate the black market. Those who want a higher THC buzz, 2 seconds. Those who want to have a higher THC buzz will seek the black market for super skunk and skunk, for that weed that will give them the better hit. Go ahead.
Surely legalising marijuana will be a huge step toward, it won't entirely eradicate the black market, but it will limit its intake substantially, because there will be enough option people to be able to go around to the local places they do whiskey or tobacco.
Well, there also we got to do a bit more globally about it as well, and that as well us having a Maastricht in the Netherlands, and that they've had to actually make it only that citizens can buy weed in Maastricht and not those coming, because what you have is weed tourism. For that weed tourism, you have people buying a large amount of cannabis, then bringing it back into the country where it is illegal, perpetuating the black market in other countries. So I think we actually take a wee bit of more on that point. No, thank you. Like actually on my arguments now. So I'm going to talk a bit more about the morality side of it. So what we see is cannabis, we're told, isn't addictive, which isn't true. Cannabis does have a 10% dependence rate, which has been established on numerous 9%, yeah, 1 in 10, 9% it is. It has been established that there is a dependence rate in it. We have seen that alcohol has a dependence rate as well. It might not be that everyone's going to be an alcoholic who has alcohol, but there is that risk there. So we have a moral obligation not to increase that risk of the citizens in our country, and to not actually allow them to have that opportunity to develop that dependence, which would be talking about will be able to bring more tax for healthcare, which we will see then a greater impact on the healthcare itself. No, thank you. So we also have to look at as well with it being more available in the public if we do have it legalised. The people who are at most risk, really, which is shown from the mental health side effects of weed, is the young people. And young people are, and you've seen it loads of times, have cigarettes all the time. You see loads of school kids walking around with cigarettes. Those are at the highest risk. I think we have another moral obligation to actually see our young people and make sure that they aren't at a higher risk of having marijuana, within which will have them increased risk of the schizophrenic psychotic episodes, depression, and mood alterations that we've seen. Now we talk about then one of the medical benefits of it, and this is kind of my forte now. So we do see that the benefits of it, we have seen an MS, glaucoma, anti-tumor, palliative care as well. So there is definite and genuine health benefits from weed, but not from cannabis smoked or inhaled. What we see is from THC and CBD, what we see is that the purified forms of those drugs, we can see that there has been anti-tumor side effects of them, there has been antiemetic side effects with nausea and vomiting. There's actually been a recent drug that's been approved by the FDA, which has been based on, that's been based on the THC9, that has seen a very good antiemetic side effect from it. Yes?
Smoking stops spasms for people with MS, and another point is less than 2% of the population have schizophrenia.
It's 1%.
1%, sorry. Since the 60s, cannabis use has shot up exponentially, and schizophrenia hasn't. So we're not
what I'm not saying is that, excuse me, schizophrenia, what happens is that I'm not saying that marijuana causes schizophrenia. It does not. It has an acute increase in psychotic episodes, which we do see. What we see with schizophrenia is that we are increasing the risk of a person relapsing into psychotic episodes with high levels of THC and CBD. And again, I don't want to perpetuate that problem with what you're talking about with muscle spasms. That's from a purified form of THC9 and from CBD. What we can do is we can purify those forms, have a lot more control of drugs and medication. And what I don't want to do now is I don't want to have people saying that cannabis affects X, Y, and Z without having proper scientific evidence of well-established data from the scientific community. What we need is proper studies, which are underway and are happening, of purified drugs and purified forms of those drugs, in which we can then have a well-established medicinal benefit of cannabinoids, but not of cannabis. There has been shown that the actual risks of it, or the dependence syndrome that you have, the motor vehicle crashes we have already talked about, which is the second highest after alcohol. We have the respiratory function decline that can be seen associated with it. There's a cardiovascular risk disease. There is the risk of those who are pregnant as well with fetal abnormalities. It is.
It's not
there is definitely. There's also the psychotic risk associated with it as well. Now, most of the studies do have shown that, I'm not going to say it causes cancer, because most of the studies are inconclusive about whether or not marijuana causes cancer. There are some anti-cancer and some pro-oncogenetic elements to it as well. So what we've got to actually see is actually more studies and more trials done before we can actually make any definite evidence on it. So that is lacking in evidence, and because it's lacking in evidence doesn't mean that we should give it the go-ahead. I don't think I'm going to have time to go on to the decriminalisation and the legalisation of it, so I'll let Emma go ahead and do it. But what I'm going to say, if she can, is that we got to help rather than stigmatise, and we got to treat rather than chastise these people. We got to bring people out of addiction rather than criminalising them, and that's the way to bring the criminality and the poverty cycle out of its own way. Unfortunately, I couldn't speak with that, but thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Jack. Sorry, excuse me. Thanks. I would now like to welcome our final speaker for the proposition, which is the party leader for Cannabis is Safer Than Alcohol, MI, Mr. Barry Brown.
This House would legalise cannabis. This House could get an opposition that wouldn't be allowed to ramble on with mistruths unchallenged. There's just such a litany of stuff that we're completely rallying on there. There's no evidence or science to back up a lot of what you were saying. Proper studies in this country, cannabis is a Schedule 1 drug, meaning there's no medical benefit, hence there can be no proper science research done on it. Our government says cannabis has no medical benefits. They issued a license in 1998 to GW Pharmaceuticals for a drug they released called Sativex, which has shown to benefit all MS patients. One patient out of 99 in Northern Ireland has access to this. This is an extract. You talk about the only benefit is in the purities. This is an extract of skunk number 1. GW Pharmaceuticals bought the patent for skunk number 1, the skunk that you got here. That's actually the seed they based that on. Big problem with that is it's too isolated. Cannabis has got 130 different elements in it. There's CBD, CBDA, THC9, there's terpenes, there's so many things. There's so many studies that have shown that big problem is that narrow, what you're talking about is completely wrong. There's certain elements where the narrow concentrated chemicals will benefit. Many of them won't. I went way off track, but go back to where I was. Other things I have to go back to you actually. I do really think we should have a position where people do come up with complete factual inaccuracies should be challenged as well, because there's just so many out there.
Questions and answers at the end.
There's loads of them. I've got nothing more to down. Decriminalisation. The big problem at the minute with cannabis, the problems are caused from the illegal market. We talked about THC, CBD, you're missing your terms all around that. CBD is actually an antipsychotic as well. They try to get a ratio of 1:1 for THC and CBD to stop people who are predetermined for psychosis. That's an issue. Regulation. We're calling for legalisation and regulation. Decriminalisation is creating the problems. Legalisation, regulation, similar to the alcohol model. We were in a political party called Cannabis Safe and Alcohol. There's no argument there. It's students and a lot of these probably smoking and drinking. You're aware of the arguments there. Cannabis is a non-toxic medication. Two main strands of the cannabis issue. One is the Misuse of Drugs Act. Two is the rescheduling. I've a smoker 20 years now. Misuse of Drugs Act hasn't bothered me. No, for the next 20 years, doesn't bother me. I will continue to smoke on. I'm not breaking the laws here. What's right? It's being recorded. I don't care. I've already had 40,000 leaflets put through make a constituent in my area's letterbox saying I've been a cannabis consumer for 20 years, so I'm glad to go to jail for them. The other angle, as I mentioned, is the Schedule 1 carry on. The government says there's no medical benefit. I can talk locally. You see these stories with Charlotte's Web and the stores across America, all the stories of cannabis being used to replace medications. People call cannabis a gateway drug. I call it an exit drug. There's so many people I've met, alcoholics for example, who are coming off their alcohol addiction. People who have a dependency, there's 90% dependency, coming off I'm dependent on cannabis, but see coming off it, no bother walking in the park. See coming off a proper alcohol dependency, not so easy. See coming off cigarettes, not so easy. So that dependency is slightly different. It's 37% problem dependency with alcohol, but coming off it's just not as easy as cannabis. So the dependency argument is a weak one, really. It really is a weak one. Sorry, getting back to the medical people, let's say there's a time. What time may I have?
Sorry, 3.5.
left. I think I have questions actually. No questions so far.
Is there any medical users here that use cannabis?
I'll point back to that. I'll point out. I got into this pretty much because I don't want to criminalise for consuming cannabis, but I found I've been party leader with SSNI for 6 months now. I'm a full-time paid job, traveling in England, Scotland, Wales, and down south. So I meet cannabis, people who want cannabis legalised. 70% of those people are medical consumers. I really had my eyes open. I genuinely thought it was people like myself who just, no, it's a drug, I should be getting criminalised. 70% of people, there's people like you mentioned earlier on, Crohn's, colitis, MS, there's talk of cancer, people curing cancer. There's been studies done in London School, or London College University. Sorry?
One of the curing cancer things again is very much anecdotal evidence.
That's the next part going on to. There's been studies done at London College University where they have done tests on lab rats with cancer and they've shown that it stops the cells growing on that one.
Yeah. On that was actually the ones that are done in Imperial College London. We're actually using extracts of THC9 for the reasonable purified form of them as well. So we'll actually use it, which comes back to my point of that we actually need to use
your brain cures cancer and it's pure form.
I said that in my speech, yeah.
What was I, sorry?
Go back unless you want to take.
Just a point on your wording there. You can't say that cannabis cures cancer. You can't really say it because one, a recent study was done into marijuana usage to cure cancer, and it was found that it was extremely vast. And two, cancer is a very varied thing, and two cancer patients sitting beside each other will probably be massively different. So you can't say that cannabis cures cancer point blank. It cures some. Yeah, that's me done.
Number one, it's illegal for me to say that cannabis cures cancer, and you go to jail for saying that. So I heard that's why I didn't actually say that as well. But yeah, you're right. I say I've talked to different cancer patients as well, and there's different ratios of cannabis, different types of cannabis that help them. As they've talked to a guy in London there who had a busted diaphragm, he got all the tests cleaned out. The guy can't eat. The only thing that allows him to eat, he's got access to cannabis oil, which is a class A drug. He's got access to feedback. He's got access to loads of different things. But the one thing that works for him is smoking blood. It's because it has that broad spectrum of different medicines. The cannabis plant itself, it's pretty much a delivery system. It grows the medicine pretty much on it. There's a big issue in Northern Ireland, down south, the issue with drugs and heroin. In the north, we have synthetic cannabis. Synthetic cannabis is a misnomer, but it's becoming a big issue up here.
It's not cannabis, but sorry.
I was going to finish off. As I say, we're a political party. We stood in 32 constituencies across the UK.
I voted for you.
Good man. Good man. The interesting thing about that is that of all 32 constituencies, in London, Manchester, Glasgow, everywhere, we had 4 candidates in Northern Ireland, and we polled maybe 1,000 over the UK, 32 candidates. Our 4 in Northern Ireland polled 2,000, and our 4 candidates topped that poll. So there's a hunger in Northern Ireland that isn't in other areas in the UK for cannabis legalisation. I put that down to the fact that the people who didn't vote for us are those. People who did vote for us are those who are sick, infirm, on receipt of DLA, and they used cannabis medically, and that's why we vote so high in Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland's highest incidence of pharmaceutical drug use and highest incidences of DLA claimants. Legalise cannabis, please.
Okay, thanks very much. And next up is our final speaker for the opposition and speaker of the evening, Ms. Emma Chadwick.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and those who don't identify with pre-existing gender roles. I'm going to keep it brief because, for obvious reasons, some of us have other places to be. And as my job as the last speaker, it's my job to summarise the debate that's gone on so far. And I just basically want to encapsulise some of the weak and fallacies that have been put forward on the proposition, and just really encapsulate why you should be voting in opposition to this House Would Legalise Marijuana. So, I think probably one of the strongest arguments that the proposition have is on money. Money, money, money. We can tax it. It's costing us money to fight it. Well, just how much would it be costing our NHS? It is bad for you. The proposition aren't denying that there are negative effects. No, it's my first minute. There are negative effects on the health. Okay, we don't know the exact numbers. There's not enough evidence. There's not enough costings by people. Sadly, we don't have the figures to say that once and for all. And also, it's a sorry state of affairs when we base how our entire society is built on how much money can we make out of this. So I'd just like to ask you to ignore that argument, because that isn't what this kind of debate should be rooted around. Another argument was, no thank you, that legalisation is going to stop substance abuse. Legalising something is going to stop it being abused. Really? Really? I mean, are cigarettes not abused? Is alcohol not abused? Are cakes not abused? I really think that is yet another argument that the proposition have put forward that we need to ignore, because it just doesn't hold up.
Cake on the milk.
Yeah, exactly, that's my point. The other one is it helps people. I think this is the argument that nobody can just ignore. If it's helping people, we have to take it seriously. But again, the majority of the evidence that is being put forward is anecdotal. There is not enough research being put into this. That's the crux of it. We need more research on larger scales, we need more medical research, and we just don't have that there now, so let's just open the floodgates and let's legalise it. I'm not saying let's ignore it, I'm not saying let's just push it under the carpet, which granted a lot of government officials are trying to do. I'm not saying that, I'm saying we need to research it more before we go guns blazing into legalising something, and that's the crux of my argument today. I'm not saying let's never legalise it, let's hold history still in this point we are now. I'm saying we are not at a place where we can legalise it. We are not. There's not enough case studies, there's not enough research, and that's the main argument I'd like to put forward today. Another thing I just wanted to pick up is that, weed's really easy to come off of, and it can be used as an exit drug. Again, I'm not sure about where the evidence of that is. There's been a lot of evidence that's saying withdrawal symptoms from marijuana are horrible, really horrible.
Can we get all this up?
Sorry.
Manners would be nice. Thank you. And so, I think there's not been a massive amount of arguments, but those are the ones I've caught up on. Again, I'd like to reiterate some of the opposition points. Morality. Is this what what we want to be promoting? Is that the kind of society we want to be promoting? You know, addiction. Marijuana is addictive. Do we not have an obligation to in some way protect our people?
Excuse me.
And another thing, I just want to bring it back to a human level. There's been a lot of statistics batted about, but schizophrenia, okay, it doesn't cause schizophrenia, but there's a lot of evidence that's saying it can encourage it and bring on relapses. And schizophrenia is a really, really horrible thing. It's not something we should just be batting around as we have done in this debate. And I'd like to just bring the personal into this a little bit. There's schizophrenia. So my auntie actually has schizophrenia, and you think of it as just it's just someone who talks to themselves occasionally, or gets a bit paranoid about the telephone. No, it's a really horrendous drug, and I don't want anybody to downplay the negatives of schizophrenia until they've seen firsthand what it has to do, until they've had to take their auntie onto a psychiatric ward on Christmas Day and spend it there. So let's not just downplay this. Let's not legalise it until we have more research into exactly, how much it promotes schizophrenia and how much it doesn't, which right now we don't have. So what I'm saying is, of all the points, of all the evidence, which I think in this debate have proven to be shaky and largely anecdotal, I think we need to agree that this House would not legalise marijuana until we have more scientific proof, statistic analysis, which right now we do not have, and for that reason I implore everybody here to oppose the motion that this House would legalise marijuana. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our speakers and to all the points of information. Now is the question and answers that I have talked about so much. Okay, so we will first take points to the proposition, then points to the opposition, and then just neutral points on the motion. So if you want to state what you think or what not directed to anybody, okay? So the first question I will take, just stand up, state your name and your question. So the first question is to the proposition. Anybody got a question?
Just like to make a point. He says about CBD strains are taking that longer to grow than THC. That's nonsense, mate. They're both take the same. So the reason that CBD isn't grown because it doesn't get you high. Nobody wants it. But he says about cannabis in the street being high THC. It's commercial crap. It's not high THC.
I did a Medline search 2 days ago about the subject. Okay, so looking at basically the medical pros and the medical cons, because that's pretty much the thing that's really gone. And if you read any, you probably do, but when you're looking at the actual Medline papers as to the actual sort of ways in which you can get these products onto the market, it's taking longer in a lab to get higher strains.
Well, you have to breed them. You have to breed them, but once you breed them and grow them, it still takes
so every Medline paper that I found on the subject, so we're talking about evidence-based discussion here, showed that product with higher strain of CBD was taking longer to grow in a lab than stuff with higher strains of HTC. So that's what the papers are showing. So you might have personal experience of it.
No, it's not personal experience.
Okay, but that's what the medical journals are saying.
Does anyone in the opposition like to comment on? No? Go. Okay. Now to take a point to the opposition, and could you stand up, state your name and address it to? Yes.
I feel like you're shaming people with mental illnesses. Weed is causing schizophrenia. Oh my god! It's not causing it. We're not sure what is causing schizophrenia and psychosis. Psychosis is an umbrella term, and schizophrenia is a disorder, a very specific disorder. So, saying addicts and people with mental illness and associating with weed, I don't think it's right.
So there's no way we're actually trying to just backwash anything with like psychosis or schizophrenia or say that we're stigmatizing it at all. What we're actually trying to say is that this drug actually increases the risk of psychosis, and psychosis is a term which just means there's hallucinations and delusions. Actually, I think the technical definition is that a hallucination or delusion that cannot be shaken and is not within the norm of society. So there is a definition of psychosis, and psychosis in itself is in part of schizophrenia. Schizophrenia has negative, positive, and neutral symptoms in it, and it is in part of it. We're not trying to backwash or wash over saying that this isn't any, I'm trying to really stigmatize it in mental health. What we're trying to say is that mental health in itself is a very tough thing, and we're not going to try and perpetuate any of these symptoms and then perpetuate any of the stigma that is associated with mental health disorders by allowing people to access a drug that may perpetuate that.
Can I address that as well?
Briefly.
It was, I mean, the clue isn't what you said. You said we're not sure, and that's the point. If there's any doubt there, should we be rolling this out on the market, or should we be taking the time to look more into it?
Firstly, on the psychosis thing, there's only casual link, there's no causal link. There is no causal link. Surely causal link. There is no evidence of it. I could find it really hard to get a doctor who will admit to actually admitting that somebody actually has cannabis psychosis. I've never seen a record recorded incidents of cannabis psychosis actually put down to just cannabis.
I've seen it in
Okay, there's no back and forth.
I'll share everything else you were saying. There's loads of evidence for also what you were saying. There's so much there is out there of all that research.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so we're now on to a point on the motion, neutral point. Yes? Can you see your name, sorry?
My name is Noel Johnson. I'm assistant NI East Belfast candidate. My question, I suppose it's frazzled my brain here listening to this, you know. I think the opposition talked themselves into being the proposition and vice versa. I don't think either knew what they were doing here. I was listening to some of the opinions, and what you just said there, young lady, you know, what we need to do is look into it and look into it. This is a room now full of young people, yeah? For too long we just listen to what other people say. So now it's time for you to look into it, read into it, just like I've done as a past student. Read into it, learn about it, because one day someone in your family is going to get sick, one day somebody in your family is going to have cancer, and you're going to look for something else. Listen to everything that he said, vote says that.
Does anyone like to comment on that? Opposition?
Yeah, I think what we're really trying to say, just saying look into it, we're thinking that we're swapping around things. What we're really saying as part of the opposition is that there isn't enough evidence, and the way that we go into it is we do it through scientific means of it. We're not doing it by having the whole of society going into it. We look at it with science, which uses strict parameters to actually assess the outcome of something. So there is, I'm not saying, as we said on our things, we're not saying that we want to legalise marijuana, but we do see that there may be some benefits which need to be investigated.
Do you need a little more campus
Sorry, probably brief comment?
The studies are there. The studies are there.
Need more evidence.
How much evidence is enough?
Okay, if we could just be polite to that one person speak time. Sorry, did you have a response to this?
We're talking about the detriments of marijuana. A lot of the problems it causes are from heavy use, so too much. I just want to bring the point that too much of anything is bad for you. That's precisely what too much means. If too much water is bad for you, that means drowning.
Valid point. Okay, so now we are back to points to the proposition. Anyone got any questions? Mr. Goss.
Thank you, Madam President. As you'd expect, we've had lots of comparisons with alcohol and tobacco this evening. So the proposition have argued for legalisation, but which end of the scale are they arguing for? So should marijuana producers be allowed to advertise and sponsor sporting events the way alcohol is, or should they be banned from any sort of indication and even packaging the way tobacco is now?
Already very much the way that alcohol is allowed to be advertised in sporting events. I think there needs to be a much more regulated alcohol and cigarette industry, and the sort of marijuana industry should basically follow that regulated suit. I don't think we should be allowed adverts on TV just like there isn't now with cigarettes. I think there should be closed packaging on cigarettes and alcohol. I think that's the way it needs to go with those two products. We're missing a trick here in the UK at the moment by not going down that sort of heavy regulated advertising model with those two products, and I think marijuana should go down that heavy regulated model with those two. I think that's the only safe way to do it with those two products, and I think marijuana, in my opinion, fits into exactly the same model as a much more heavily regulated model of advertising for cigarettes and alcohol.
Quick response from
Well, the problem here is to what length you compare the two. The problem is the more you regulate and tax a product, the more the grey market slips into the gap in demand. Disenfranchised communities in particular was brought up as a case example for what should be legal. However, whenever the cost to enter the market gets too high, then the ones that will slip into the gaps will not be legal providers. But that's just a sticky one. I don't know.
Still no. Okay, so point to the question or point to the opposition? Yes.
My point.
Could you state your name, sorry?
Jake. So my point just is, look, she says there hasn't been enough studies done on it. But if it's not legal, how can there be enough studies done on it? Because they're not putting it into the wide population. Look at alcohol, look at tobacco. Tobacco, how can you need to give it a fair trial. It hasn't been given a fair trial against the rest. So you cannot state that there are not enough studies if you're not prepared to do those studies.
Okay, have you?
Yeah, well, I don't have millions. Sorry, we don't have millions of pounds myself to throw at studies into cannabis, but I'd probably support those studies. And I think sort of saying, oh well, you can't study it until it's legalised, which I think was what you were saying, is a bit dangerous. We could just legalise anything and say, oh well, we'll see how it works out, and if it's good, great, and if not, oh well, never mind. I don't think that's a good way to work with society.
I just pretty much say it ties into the government, says that cannabis has no medical benefit. They have issued licenses to a business who have proven that cannabis does have medical benefit, yet they still keep the line that doesn't have medical benefit. Other countries have done so many studies, same as advertising. So many companies have done this. We're not correct, we're not inventing the wheel. This is done in so many other countries. We should latch on science, science, latch on to the science that's been shown positive to other countries, same as advertising, the regulations. It's all been done. We're trying to reinvent the wheel here.
Thank you. And now for a point on the motion. Anybody got something just to... Yes, can you start to state your name, please?
Hi, my name's Bradley. I actually came into this room vaguely in favour of legalising marijuana, but the opposition's actually swayed me a little bit. I think I've been a little bit frustrated because the proposition keeps saying, it's a load of rubbish, all this stuff they've said, there's plenty of studies, blah, blah, blah. But I haven't actually heard much evidence from you, so I've heard quite a bit anecdotal. But particularly the middle speaker on the opposition, I was quite impressed with his delivery of quite a lot of scientific evidence. And I'm still not exactly against legalisation. I'd probably move more towards the middle. But that's just kind of my general comment on it. If there is all this evidence for the benefits of marijuana, I'd like to hear something beyond anecdotal to convince me.
Yeah, thank you.
Encouraging marijuana's use, we're saying it should be legalized, not actively encouraged. Basically what we're saying is free and consenting adults should be given the option to use the substance as they wish, just as they are with alcohol, just as they are with tobacco. Going back to Stephen's point, that it should just, if it was sold like tobacco, not to actively advertise and with the warnings available, that would be perfectly acceptable.
I think we've had a lot of arguments from the proposition saying that there are studies and there's studies out there and the studies are good, but I think what we've got to look at is actually good studies that actually have a good scientific impact. We've had the example from ages ago that MMR caused autism, which was completely defunct in its own way. So what we're not looking for is loads and loads and loads of studies, because people can do loads and loads and loads of studies and frankly do shite science. But what we actually need is someone to do what we need is actually good studies, good science, that doesn't have a population size of 7, doesn't have a population size of 6. We need studies that have population sizes of the minimum number for statistical methods is 30, and a lot of the actual human clinical studies don't usually use 30, and that's what we need. We need hard evidence and science rather than going on anecdotal evidence that's then roped in to a paper and said that it's science when it's only 7 people, which in reality is just anecdotal evidence.
Okay, Sperling. Point to the proposition. Yes, the man in the hat.
Mary, going back to what you were saying, going back to you first, about the advertising of marijuana. Why shouldn't, if it's going to be used for medical use, that should be promoted, not hidden away, for one. And I forgot what he said because I've smoked too much.
I'm not quite sure which side that was. Okay, sorry. Okay, well, we'll go to opposite version. Sorry.
Yes, sorry, I know what it was. The study, about the study. Do you do the study yourselves?
Me personally?
Whoever you're with at the university? Or?
I'm not within the university.
No,
Study.
well, the study shouldn't be too hard to find because I suffer from fibromyalgia, and the tablets that I'm on, I have to take. They're extremely powerful tablets, and if you abuse them, you end up in a severely drunken state, which isn't very nice at all. As soon as I wake up in the morning, I sit myself down and roll myself and smoke, and within 10-15 minutes, that I can feel that affecting me, and it motivates me. It goes through my body. It starts making the pain that I go through every day more bearable. It doesn't take the pain away, but nor does the tablets. And for me, smoking a flower off a plant is more acceptable than what I'm meant to be taking from a prescription from a doctor. It shouldn't be too hard. If you're looking for 30 people, I'm sure there'd be 30 people, no problem. We've got 30 people on the side, 30 people to try pharmaceutical, 30 people to try cannabis.
Okay, we'll go to the opposition first to respond.
I appreciate your sentiment and where you're coming from, but I think my chair. I appreciate where you're coming from, your sentiment, and I appreciate that you're having a tough time with the medication, and it's not great medication to be taken at times. But the difficulty with the studies is we probably do have a lot of people willing to actually partake in the studies. But if you let me go on, the difficulty is trying to find the money to fund that. I mean, but sorry. Can I speak? The big thing is that to actually have a scientific investigation into things, it's not just so much as buying weed and then paying and then watching some people do it. You got to pay a lot of people to do things. You got to pay. This is studies. Science is costly. Science is expensive. You see the amount of money goes into the cancer research building. It's in the millions and millions. It's more so to do with funding, and it's more so. There probably is more evidence needed for it, and we've all, I think, we're both on the same side with arguments. We both agree there's more evidence needs done. So what we need to do is actually tackle the government and actually find some way to actually sequester funds to actually investigate into it. And I'm not saying that it is beneficial or anything. What we're saying is that more evidence needs to be done.
Thank you.
There's two things here to discuss really. You've got the medical use here, and then you've got the recreational use here. For some people they may be arguably similar, but in reality when it comes to advertising, you're right. If you're talking about medical use, fine, advertise a medical product. If you're talking recreation, different ballgame completely. I think everyone in this room can accept that.
I disagree.
They can't. No. Okay, look, in terms of actual evidence, in terms of actual papers, okay, there is actually fairly strong evidence when it comes to treating MS, musculoskeletal and palliative care. There's strong evidence. Anyone who says otherwise hasn't done a full literature search, okay? Yeah, so that's musculoskeletal problems, palliative care and MS. Fairly strong evidence. In terms of where there's weaker evidence, that's with respiratory side effects of marijuana, and that's because of the way in which it's delivered. Okay, and then you've got issues with some, I'm going to use this term, mental health issues, okay? I'm sorry if that offends anybody, but in terms of actually finding strong evidence about that, it's very, very difficult, okay? So you've got a big school of thought which says decent evidence, then you've got not good evidence. And that's where we are at the moment. Okay, that's, if you do a literature search, that's where we're at.
This is going to be our last set of questions. Just as peaks okay, so we're pointing to the proposition, because the last one was to the opposition. Yes, 2 comments.
This is just a point about the whole, this is just a point about the whole thing. There's a lot of moral debate, but I don't think there's not enough cognitive freedom debate. You know, we're all adults here. We can make our own decisions about what we want to purchase and do it on our consciousness. I think there's a case for saying that people who are 18 have the right to buy marijuana legally and have the right to change their consciousness as they feel see fit. I think there should be more debate on that, not just the moral stuff, because the moral stuff is a nightmare. And secondly, there is an amazing organisation called MAPS, Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. Look it up online. It's got extremely reliable information, not just about marijuana, but about other drugs, including psychedelics. So look it up. If you want to make up your mind, go there and make up your mind. That's what I have to say.
Would you like to comment on that?
I completely agree with you. I'm libertarian, right? So for me, it's about people making their own decision. We broadly know if we're going to go and I'm going to use the example again, if we get drunk, we know what happens. If we smoke weed, we broadly know what happens. Okay, I think people should be making their own mind up, and we should, as a sort of state, be benefiting financially from it.
Can you respond briefly, because I can see Peter?
All right. Well, I suppose freedom of choice is an argument. However, consider that the reason why, as the opposition, we've come to emphasise the addictive elements of it in particular, is that that's when it stops becoming a rational choice. It becomes feeding a dependency rather than, oh, I'd like to do this, much like an alcoholic or someone who's suffering nicotine withdrawal. But I absolutely would encourage the dispersal of reliable information on the issue.
Okay, I think the proposition sort of dodged 2 questions there inadvertently, but we will now go to a vote. I know a few of you have signed up already. There's membership cards at the back, and it's £5 today to sign up. But so we'll just vote with raise your hand and say aye if yes, and nay if no. Okay, so the first vote is going to be on your actual opinion. So what do you think this house would legalise marijuana? All those in favour?
Aye.
Yes.
24.
I got 21.
Again.
Sorry.
One more time, lads.
White hair. Boy. These are meant to be clever people. I
get 26.
26?
Yeah.
Okay.
Even better.
And all those who are against, raise your hand and say nay. Nay.
18.
Yes. And all those that don't really have an opinion on this matter. 1, 2, 3.
4, I think.
4, sorry. Okay. And the second vote, which I believe is the voting vote, is which side, now personal thoughts aside, which side of the house do you think were the better speakers? So whether they convinced you or not, that's irrelevant. So all those in favour for the proposition, raise your hand, say aye.
You're a good speaker and that boy in the end's a good speaker. The rest of
Okay, and all of you think the proposition, or sorry, the opposition were better speakers, raise your hand, say aye.
You must have voted for us here.
I'm for the proposition.
I'm drinking this.
Nothing for him, but well good. Well good.
24.
And all of you who didn't really like either side or thought they were equally good speakers.
Again, hands.
All abstaining, hands nice and high.
Okay.
What is this?
Three.
This is for the sitters.
Okay, so it seems that the opposition have won on best figure vote. So. If you don't want to sign up, guys, if you want to go and sign up, speak to the secretary at the back. Next week's debate is this House believes the West created ISIS, and we will be having pizza, which is outside in this room. So just wait till it comes in for like munchies, and apologies for saying that.